Welcome to Maniac Movies, doing Lonely Hearts. I do updates Wednesdays and Fridays, and this has accidentally become the Jared Leto True Crime Week. Let's talk about the movie.
You want to know why we did it?
Alright, so Lonely Hearts is a true crime film from released in 2006, and the reason I thought about this is because I, like everybody, saw the Justice League trailer where it was like, holy crap, they're bringing back Jared Leto's Joker, and he doesn't have the goofy wardrobe, so it won't be all distracting this time. I'm really looking forward to that. I think Jared Leto has a great Joker in him. That said, I don't think he's going to be in Justice League any more than he was in Suicide Squad, which is to say not a lot. But hopefully they'll give him something cool. He already gave us a meme that everyone's going crazy over. We're living in a society. I know that existed before the movie, but the movie's kind of made it famous for people that don't live on Twitter. So, anyway, it made me think about other Jared Leto villain roles, and he did two true crime movies in the late 2000s, Lonely Hearts and Chapter 27, and that made me kind of want to watch those movies. I haven't watched either one in a really long time. So I watched Lonely Hearts, that's what I'm doing today. I'm doing Chapter 27 Friday. So Lonely Hearts is about the Lonely Hearts Killers, a notorious pair of serial killers played by Jared Leto and Salma Hayek in this movie. Their real names were Ray Hernandez and Martha Beck, and this movie race swapped them for reasons, I don't know why, because Ray Hernandez obviously was Latin and Martha Beck was white. In this movie, Jared Leto is white playing Ray Hernandez, and Martha Beck is played by Salma Hayek, who is not white. So this flick is actually directed by the grandson of the cop on the case, Elmer Robinson, played by John Travolta in this movie. It was also written by him. And this guy, the director, he didn't have much film experience either before or after this. Before this, he did a few documentaries. After this, he did a couple World War II movies. But never a particularly prolific filmmaker or anything. But he managed to get this movie together, and this is a pretty solid movie. He assembled a great cast. I mean, he got Jared Leto, he got Salma Hayek, he got John Travolta, he got James Gandolfini, Laura Dern, Alice Craig, Scott Caan. There's a lot of people in this movie that are pretty recognizable. And this movie kind of got unfairly dismissed when it was released because there was a movie in 1970 based on the same case called The Honeymoon Killers. They were called the Lonely Hearts Killers in the papers. I don't know why they did that, but The Honeymoon Killers is generally a very well-respected movie. It was actually originally supposed to be directed by Martin Scorsese, but Scorsese was fired early into production because the producer didn't like the way he was shooting the movie. So I've seen The Honeymoon Killers exactly one time, and I didn't like it. I mean, I remember it starred an actor I don't like named Tony LoBianco, who also starred in the Larry Cohen horror flick God Told Me To. And I remember not liking the movie. I don't remember much about it, to be perfectly honest. I think it was in black and white, which was kind of weird given it was 1970. Like 1970, color films were pretty common, but I might be remembering that wrong. Like I said, I saw it one time forever ago. I remember not liking it. I like this movie. I think that the acting and the case is, and the fact that the case is really interesting and that this has a really solid cast is what saves it because the director's inexperience shows here. Now, it doesn't show in any kind of amateurish way. Again, he gets good performances from his actors. There's good production design for a film set in the 40s. You know, it's got the wardrobe, the buildings, the architecture, the music, the style, the cars. You know, all of it's there. It's all on point. It's just got pacing issues. This movie feels old-fashioned, and I know this is a 15-year-old movie, but even by that, it still feels old-fashioned, almost well, it is a little to a fault because it is just, again, kind of slow, but it's not boring. I'm not saying this is a boring movie. It's just that this is kind of two parallel stories because you're spending a lot of time with Jared Leto and Salma Hayek as the Lonely Hearts Killers. Now, this was an instance where a con man, kind of a two-bit nobody, Ray Hernandez, played by Leto, was going into what were called Lonely Hearts, which was kind of like the dating app of the day. You'd send something in the newspaper, and it would say, "Hey, I'm single. Um, I'm white. I'm 48. I'm divorced. I have a kid. Whatever." And then hopefully someone would respond to you, and you'd kind of pen pal a little bit and decide if you wanted to meet up. And he was doing that, and he was specifically targeting mostly middle-aged women, partly because they were more likely to have money, and partly because they'd be willing to put up with his shit a little bit more. And he would steal their money and then move on until he tried to run this scam on a woman named Martha Beck. So I'm going to go by the movie first, and then I'll talk a little bit about the true story because they did make some changes. But in the movie, he goes after Martha Beck, and that did happen in real life. and pretty quickly realized she didn't have any money. So he's just like, I'm out. Like they had sex, done. So but she kind of clocked him too. She saw him coming. And there's this great thing where every time he meets a new woman, he brings her a flower, but this motherfucker will not drop a dime on a flower. He always finds a place to steal it from. So, but when he ditches Martha, he goes straight to a wealthy man's funeral, figuring that the guy's widow, maybe he can squeeze some money out of here. Like, maybe this trip won't be a total loss because he's already figured out he's not getting any money out of Martha. And he goes in a white suit, like a white button-down suit to a funeral. And he starts trying to go, oh, I'm so sorry. And the dead man's son immediately reads him like, dude, you're so full of shit. And Martha actually follows him and kind of saves his ass a little bit. And Martha's also in a red cocktail gown, so she clearly won't go into a funeral either. But I thought that was kind of a funny note where everyone's in black, it's a funeral, and he's in a white suit, and she's in this red cocktail gown that shows off her cleavage. But she kind of shows up and saves him a little bit, and they head out together, and that's the beginning of a wonderful, no, it's actually a horrible partnership because they killed a lot of people. Um, so yeah, they started running the con together, and Raymond found that it worked a little bit better to have his sister Martha with him because it put the women he was trying to scam at ease a little bit more. The issue is that Martha would become violently jealous of these women. Raymond wasn't supposed to have sex with them. That was like a rule. And if he did, it got bad real fast. And Raymond, of course, thinking with his dick, would like every so often, no, we'll just do it. She probably won't find out. Right? Next room, we'll be quiet. She would find out, and that was how the murders started. So, yeah, that's the gist of what they were doing. And but towards the beginning of their partnership, their criminal partnership, one woman just found out she was being scammed. She caught Raymond banging his, again, sister, and it's like, okay, and she was pregnant with his kid, so whether she realized they weren't really brother and sister or she thought she was impregnated by a degenerate pervert, who knows, but she killed herself. And John Travolta's character catches the case. And it's explained in the opening of this movie, which I thought was kind of weird, given that this is directed by a guy who, this is his grandmother. He's depicting his grandmother. And she committed suicide under mysterious circumstances. She didn't leave a note. It's implied that she killed herself because her husband was too into his job and she was so lonely. But the way it's shot is odd. It's to this kind of bouncy, happy music, and then she just offs herself in the bathtub, which I thought was an interesting detail because she clearly was trying not to leave a mess, which is kind of a sad statement on the way she was thinking at the time. Is like, I don't want to inconvenience anybody. So she killed herself in the bathtub, and after that, he kind of wasn't as involved in cases. He wrote a desk for a while, and this was a case that he randomly just happened to catch, and it was a bit of a yank. He was a homicide detective, and it was presumed suicide, but he kind of read in it that something else was going on here. And everyone keeps telling him this isn't a homicide, this is a suicide. At worst, this is a con job. They didn't, but he keeps saying like, nah, there's something here. And his partner, played by James Gandolfini. Now James Gandolfini is he's dead. He died a good while back, I believe about 10 years ago. His last movie, I think, was that Brad Pitt movie, Killing Them Softly, which wasn't very good. But best known for starring in the HBO mob series The Sopranos. I actually remember him best for the Nicolas Cage thriller 8mm. But yeah, so his partner is James Gandolfini, and so it's Travolta and his partner kind of piecing this case together, and they're tracking because these are con artists. They're flying all over the country conning different people. So this is a very sprawled out case. It's not an easy one to make. So it's them kind of building their case and figuring out what was going on. And everyone keeps trying to equate this to the death of Travolta's wife, and that he's reading more into it until they finally find pretty conclusive evidence that these two did actually murder someone. So yeah, it's these two stories kind of run in parallel, and they don't interact is the thing. Like there's no the cop Elmer Robinson never interacted with the criminal Ray Hernandez. Like so there it does feel like you're kind of watching two different movies happen. And the way I would compare it is like that movie The Highwaymen, the Netflix movie with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson, where it's about the cops chasing Bonnie and Clyde. You stay on the cops. Bonnie and Clyde are barely in that movie. And that worked because when you try to do this thing of you're doing the detective story and the criminal story, invariably, depending on the viewers, you're going to be more engaged in one or the other. If you like detective stories, you're going to like, I'd really just rather be with the cops. Or if you like true crime, serial killer stories, you're going to like, I'd rather follow the killers. Me being a horror fan, obviously, I'd rather follow the killers. I think that's the more interesting end of the story. And I will say that I think Salma Hayek steals this movie. Salma Hayek is fantastic in this movie. So Salma Hayek is an actress who, of course, got famous for Desperado and then Wild Wild West, and she fought hard not to be typecast as a pretty face. Like, she wanted to be a real actress, and that's not easy for a woman who looks the way a man would draw his perfect woman to look. Like giant breast, tiny waist, giant ass, long slender legs, pretty fit. Like she's a physical specimen, and she, like I said, she tried very hard to not be the pretty girl in the movie. She actively sought out real roles, and this is a real role for her. Now, she is nothing like the real Martha Beck. The real Martha Beck was obese and white. But she's great in the movie, though. She really is. It would be safe to say that Martha is obsessed with Raymond. That she's not interested in the con. She's not interested in the money. She just wants him, and because he's a con man who likes money, she's going along with that. She has no real interest in the crimes beyond just trailing along behind Raymond. And this sort of, an obsession isn't the same thing as love, even though the people obsessed often will think they're in love. And her obsession with him is, dangerous, and it is kind of grating on him. It's obviously putting him on edge, because if you've ever been in a relationship where your partner, male or female, is constantly like that at a 10, like anything can set them off, and because she clearly really can't handle watching with these other women, it's wearing on him. And this is a guy who was just kind of this fun-loving playboy until he hooked up with Martha, and Martha helped his cons work smoother, but it also made it harder for him to go out and party. So the partnership is shaky, and the partnership is difficult, and when you have once you've established that you're willing to kill someone, every argument has that in it. Like in Natural Born Killers, like any argument between this couple could conceivably end with one killing the other. There's a point where Martha is pulls a gun on Raymond and points it at his dick, and there's later a scene where Raymond pulls a gun and holds it to Martha's neck, and Martha says, "All right, if you don't love me, then kill me. I'm done. I don't care anymore." And again, Salma Hayek is playing these scenes so well, but so is Jared Leto. Jared Leto's a great actor. He really is, and he's an actor who really likes. He's got that kind of Johnny Depp thing where he kind of seems to want to hide the fact that he's handsome. So every movie he kind of uglies himself up in a different way, whether it's like Requiem for a Dream where he got like heroin junkie skinny, or Panic Room where he had the dumbass cornrows, or Dallas Buyers Club where he was a transvestite. In this movie, the real Ray Hernandez was bald, so Jared Leto shaved his head, but then he tweezed it around the edges to give it a sense that he was still losing his hair. So he has these little sprigs of hair left. And I thought it was interesting, too, the way you see that he puts his toupee on, because he wears a toupee when he's trying to charm these women, is that he does this on his forehead, and right where his hand ends is where he puts the toupee. And I thought that's kind of clever. I've never known anyone that wore a hairpiece. I don't know that I've ever even seen a hairpiece in real life. So I also he uses double-sided tape on his head. Do people with toupees do that? I always assumed it was like a beret or something. It just clipped into the hair that still existed on your head, because it seems kind of weird just to have tape stuck to your skull. But I don't know. I guess if it bothers you that you're losing your hair, you'll do something about it. But yeah, Leto plays this role really well. He's got the charming asshole part down, because yeah, he can do that, and we've seen, he can be a charming prick. But the scenes where he's really fighting with Martha are also really solid. And towards the end of the movie, when he really runs off the rails, because I mean, this guy goes on a full-blown massacre towards the end of the film, he plays that well. He's a good villain. He's a convincing villain. Salma Hayek's character has more emotion, has more weight to her, so it is the more impressive performance. But they're both very, very good in this movie. As for John Travolta's actually really cast against type, because Travolta's a guy who likes to play kind of bouncy characters. He tends to play very energetic people, and he tends to infuse at least a little bit of humor into every role he plays, even when he's the villain. Pulp Fiction, there are some very funny moments that he gets in Pulp Fiction. Face Off, Broken Arrow, Sword, like, no matter how serious the movie is, he usually finds a way to kind of have fun with it. In this movie, he's dour. I mean, he's a widower. He's an unhappy guy. He doesn't have a good relationship with his son. he's kind of at a wall with his job. His son is played by Dan Bird, who would be this director's father, and that had to be weird, directing scenes where you're telling a kid how to play your dad as a teenager. But yeah, Dan Bird. I've seen him in a few things. I know him mostly as the son in the Hills Have Eyes remake. But yeah, so he's an unhappy guy, Travolta's character, Elmer Robinson, and that was kind of weird. It was interesting seeing Travolta play something different. Like I said, I haven't seen him do that very often. Just this sort of, sad, unhappy, grumpy guy with a bit of a temper. Yeah, James Gandolfini is pretty much James Gandolfini. I mean, James Gandolfini in almost, I say almost, not everything, but almost everything I did, played a New York street guy. Like, oh, hey, what are we fucking doing here? Like, we can get some food or what? Like, just that kind of character in everything he did. But he's good at it, so it's fine. So, and also they have their partner that they work with a few times in the movie, and it was kind of awkward how this guy just falls in and out of the movie. Is Scott Caan. So Scott Caan is the guy, James Caan's son from The Godfather. Scott Caan is the guy that got famous for Varsity Blues, where he played the kind of bull in a china shop football star. And he kind of floated around until he landed on that show Hawaii Five-O, which is one of those procedural cop shows that runs for 15 years. It basically ends when the leads are too physically old to do it anymore, and I think that show is still on. But he plays the kind of asshole young guy that they basically use as an errand boy, and but he hates it, and Scott Caan's always giving him shit. There's a couple scenes where he gets into fights. Well, he gets into a fight with both Travolta and Gandolfini at different points in the movie. And the scene with Travolta is pretty cool because Travolta grabs him by the throat and says, "Chew out your fucking tongue," because he said something insensitive about Travolta's dead wife. And then when he gets into a fight with Gandolfini, because there's this running joke where Gandolfini keeps claiming to have slept with Scott Caan's wife. Versus James Gandolfini, he's a big dude. And Scott Caan, he's muscular, but he's short. I mean, he's like 5'6". James Gandolfini just picks his ass up and throws him in a lake. That was pretty funny. There are a few dark humor moments in this movie. So yeah, overall it's a solid movie. It's just a little, like I said, it's just a little slow. So yeah, it's good. It's not great. If you're a fan of these actors, any of the leads, it's worth watching. So you get to see Travolta do something that's a little bit different for him. You get to see Gandolfini doing exactly what he does and everything. Jared Leto's a good, unpredictable, interesting actor, and Salma Hayek's a great actress who, in my opinion, never quite got the respect she deserved. I mean, she's famous, she still works, but yeah, I'm really excited about that new movie she's got because they're doing a sequel to The Hitman's Bodyguard, where she was Samuel L. Jackson's wife, and she spent that whole movie in jail. But they're doing a sequel supposedly called The Hitman's Wife, which is gonna get her out of jail and kind of have her on her own adventure with Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds backing her up. So that should be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, good movie. Didn't love it, but I like it, and it's one that's worth watching. So I'm gonna do some spoilers from here on out. So spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. All right, so well, right off the bat, so the first girl that the first dead body they find, the one that presumably actually did commit suicide, she is found naked in a bathtub, and I will say that I respect this movie for actually acknowledging that when people bleed to death, they get pale. No movie does that. Everyone looks completely normal. Now this woman is chalk white. So when they take a picture of her and they show it to, I think it was her sister, for I guess identification purposes. But she's naked and like her tits are showing in the bloody bathtub. I was thinking, couldn't you have framed that differently? Did you really need like a different modicum of respect, at least so her family doesn't have to see her like that? I damn sure wouldn't want that to be the last thing I saw of a loved one. Just let me see the face. Like, that was an odd thing I noticed. So we get the first murder with their first murder with Alice Krige. Now Alice Krige is a really good actress. I like her a lot. She's best known for playing the ghost in the movie Ghost Story, which is that early '80s horror movie where the old guys had killed the woman, starred Fred Astaire. She was great in that. And then Sleepwalkers, the notorious Stephen King movie with the cats. I kind of enjoy Sleepwalkers, honestly. She was the evil mom in Sleepwalkers. But what was that line she had? I can't remember. I'm gonna screw it up. I probably should do a video on Sleepwalkers. That's a fun movie to talk about. So, but yeah, so they're trying to fleece her, and she's got something like 7K in the bank, which in the '40s was probably like 70K. So, but she's having sex with Ray, and that was a big no. You're not supposed to have sex. And Martha sneaks in and just cracks her skull the hell open with a hammer. And I will say that Alice Krige is nude in this movie, and she had to be about 50 in this movie. damn, she was holding up well. But so Martha kills her, and then Martha forces Ray to jerk off in front of her with a dead body laying next to him. Like I said, this movie gets dark. I mean, this is legit a dark crime film. Like their crimes were kind of disturbing, especially towards the end because they murdered a child. Um, because the next woman they go after, who was played by an actress that was on the TV show Shameless for a while, and she was also on Westworld for a while. Her name is impossible to pronounce. It's like Dagmar but she's a single mom, and apparently she has a chunk of money left over from what I don't think the movie ever said. But this did really happen, and again, Martha finds out that Ray slept with her because she's pregnant. So they kill her, and then they kind of try not to kill her child. They almost try to sort of adopt her child. Yeah, that's gonna work. You murdered their mom. And the kid bites Martha, and Ray's getting stir crazy because he's listening to these two women scream at each other. And then Martha drowned the little girl. And they don't show it in the movie, probably because it would have been just a little too awful for mainstream audiences. This is a pretty mainstream movie. I mean, you got big names in it. But they heavily imply what they did to her because they keep showing the kid and they keep showing the bathtub and they keep showing the kid and they keep showing the bathtub. Then later on, they find the kid's body stuffed into a box that originally held a tricycle, which was pretty sad. And Travolta's reaction to seeing the dead child is very convincing. It would be awful to see that. He plays that very well. So yeah, they catch him, they bust him. It takes like 4 cops to hold down Salma Hayek, which I believe because I think Salma Hayek could straight own in a fight. I really do. So and Ray pusses out. He just runs. Jerry just bolts, and Travolta runs him down. And they don't show it, and I swear to God, I think they didn't show it because there was no way to show John Travolta convincingly catch up to Jared Leto. Because Jared Leto is except when he gets out of shape for a movie, he is a physical specimen. And Travolta, I had kind of because I hadn't watched this movie in a long time. I had kind of forgotten just how much weight John Travolta gained in the late 2000s. Like after Battlefield Earth sort of hurt, I mean, basically, it really, really damn near killed his career. He gained a lot of weight, and he is big in this movie. And there was no way John Travolta's 220-pound ass was catching Jared Leto. So it's just a cut where John Travolta's like, "I'll get him," and then I got him. But yeah, you get that. Then they interrogate him, and Salma Hayek has this line where she says, "Ray loves me so much he would kill or die for me." And I didn't like that line because, it's clearly supposed to harken back to Travolta's wife committing suicide, presumably because she couldn't live without him. And it just feels like that was a line that was put in her mouth. That doesn't feel authentic. That line, because it's so important to the movie, it stood out to me because it doesn't work very well. Salma Hayek delivers it well. It's certainly not her fault. It's just anyway. So they get the electric chair. There's this whole thing in the movie where they're very specific on which case they try them for because apparently these two killers were at least implicated or suspected in 23 murders. Now, in the movie, that we only see them commit a handful of those. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 5. But apparently there were, what's that? I suck at math. 17 other people they were considered to have been suspects in their murders, but they only ever convicted them of one because they wanted to make sure these two got the death penalty. And New York had a death penalty at that time. I don't know if it still does. But yeah, they execute Ray first, and the movie makes it seem like they executed him on essentially the same day. I kind of doubt that's how it really happened. But then again, in the movie, they do this thing where, they execute Ray, and he pusses out, he's crying, and then they walk Martha in, and she didn't care. The love of her, whatever, the object of her obsession is gone. She doesn't give a shit anymore. So she just sits down, they ask her any last words, and she says, "So long." But when she first walks in there, my first thought was, wouldn't they execute her in a women's prison? And then I thought, not enough women get executed for a women's prison to specifically have an electric chair. No, she'd be sent to the men's prison because it's very rare that women get executed. And when she walks into the chamber, she says she can still smell Raymond. She goes, "I can still smell him, so sweet." And I was thinking, where that motherfucker always smelled like burnt bacon. He's a bad guy. So yeah, they execute him. And there's this running subplot in the movie that I really could have done without, because the movie ends with Travolta's character retiring from the cops and going to live with this woman played by Laura Dern and his son. And like I said, the romantic subplot with Laura Dern, I didn't need it. It felt like it slowed the movie down. It just wasn't very interesting or engaging. I like Laura Dern, actually. She is a good actress. I know most people, sadly associate her with Star Wars: The Last Jedi now, but it's not her fault because she didn't write the movie. But her character in that movie, Admiral Holdo, I think, is now one of the most hated characters in Star Wars. But it's not her fault. Look at the old David Lynch movie she did. She is a great actress, but it's just her character's kind of boring in this movie. She's just a love interest. She slows the movie down. This is a movie that's already struggling with pacing, so to keep stop every 20 minutes or so and remind us, oh yeah, Travolta's dating Laura Dern. Yeah, pretty solid movie. As far as the real case goes, I was gonna do that. So yeah, like I said, this cut out a whole bunch of killings that these two committed. Because watching this movie, it kind of feels like these are the only crimes that this movie. It doesn't feel like they've killed a whole lot of other people. It feels like these were the only people they killed, especially in Raymond's reactions later in the movie when he seems genuinely horrified by the crimes. When if they had off 20 people, it would seem like he would be used to it by then. But yeah. Oh, the real Martha was morbidly obese. So apparently, when they executed her, they had to like refit the electric chair for her to fit into it. But yeah, besides that, this is a pretty factual story. It stays more or less close. A few of the names were changed, which that I think that happens when the victims refuse, like they say, no, you can't use my dead relatives' names, because I know that that's I've seen that happen in other movies too, where the killer's name is the same, but they won't use any of the real victims' names. The Ted Bundy movie did that. But yeah, overall, pretty solid flick. Well shot, and like I said, I'm like, share, and subscribe, all that. And the next update will be Friday. And if you haven't seen Chapter 27, it's a really good movie from what I remember. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember it being a great flick. Jared Leto plays the man who killed John Lennon, the member of the Beatles in New York City. So look forward to that. And I might do a bonus video if I feel like it, because I picked up a cheesy old horror movie that I remember liking when it first came out at the Dollar Tree. So if I have anything to say about that, I might throw one up. Otherwise, it'll be Friday, Chapter 27. Later.